The Atlanta Hawks, after months of trade speculation around DeJounte Murray, around Trae Young, have finally made their move. It is DeJounte Murray headed to New Orleans in exchange for Larry Nance, Dyson Daniels, and a couple of first-round picks. And according to Woj, neither of these teams are done making moves this offseason yet either. He mentions that Atlanta still has work to do this offseason, presumably in trying to find a direction for the franchise around Trae Young or without Trae Young. Meanwhile, for New Orleans, they're still trying to figure out a new Brandon Ingram contract, as he's not even mentioned within this core that they could potentially be moving forward with. Now, for Atlanta, the motivations here are obvious. We knew that they were going to try and break up this backcourt this offseason. Whether they were going to be successful or not depended on the trade packages they expected in return. We've gotten rumors all offseason about how DeJounte Murray actually probably has better trade value around the league right now than Trae Young does, which is interesting because this doesn't seem like a ton. So if Trae Young is worth a little bit less than this, what exactly is Trae Young worth? But we knew that this was a real possibility for them, and this isn't necessarily going into a full tank mode because they still have Trae, they still have Bogdanovich. Obviously, they just picked the guy with the first overall pick. They've still got some decent pieces. It's not like they're one of the worst rosters in the league or anything, but this was always a choice that needed to be made. They needed to pick either Trae Young or DeJounte Murray to trade away, and they chose Murray. I'm okay with the assets they got back. I like Dyson Daniels. I think in a different situation where he got more run in New Orleans, he could really improve. I really like him defensively. He just got to figure out a way to shoot. And in what it was a very crowded defensive, backcourt and wing rotation there in New Orleans, he just wasn't going to get a ton of run. So I like getting him back. They have the salary of Larry Nance as well. The picks, though, aren't exactly ideal. So we've got a 2025 first-round pick via the Lakers and a 2027 first that is the least favorable of Milwaukee and New Orleans. And assuming that Giannis is still in Milwaukee, that's probably going to be a pick in the 20s. And then the Lakers pick, I mean, even though they might be in danger of missing the play-in, I'd be very surprised if that Lakers pick ends up being in the lottery. So you're looking at two picks outside of the top 15 plus Dyson Daniels and a salary in exchange for DeJounte Murray. Now, clearly, they have shopped this guy for a while, so they know what the value of him is, and this is the best offer that they got. But I find it interesting that that is the best offer that they got, considering the assets that they were willing to trade away for DeJounte Murray when they got him from San Antonio. And as I said, I think it helps us understand a little bit better where exactly the Trae Young market might be. I'm very interested to see where Atlanta goes from here. If they continue to sell off pieces, and this is like a mini rebuild around Trae where they trade away Bogdanovich, Capella, some of the veterans, and then they build around some of these younger guys like Daniels, like Richeche, like maybe they keep DeAndre Hunter, whatever the case may be. They traded away AJ Griffin. Clearly, they're trying to change up this roster in a significant way, and this particular deal, to me, says two things. One, they split up the backcourt, and two, they want to go younger. They want to add some assets, and that definitely brings into question Trae Young's future in Atlanta, as well as some of these other veterans that could possibly be on the move that they could get some pieces for. If they trade away some of those veterans and they keep Trae, I don't really understand what the plan is there. So we're definitely keeping an eye on potentially more moves from Atlanta this offseason. For New Orleans, I really like the deal. I don't think they gave up a ton, certainly in terms of their rotation. Dyson Daniels wasn't really going to play that much for them this year. Even if you project a little bit more improvement from him, he just hasn't really been able to find that consistent spot in the rotation. He's been passed up by guys that they've even drafted after him as well. And the two picks, like I said, they're probably not going to be overwhelmingly valuable. And these kinds of deals are exactly what you should be using those picks for if you're in the position that New Orleans is in. Because what are they going to do with a couple other picks outside of the top 15? They've already got a ton of depth. They've already got a ton of guys. And bringing in Murray is a nice complement in the backcourt alongside CJ McCollum. As of right now, CJ McCollum is going to continue to be on the Pelicans. He's under contract for the next couple of seasons, as is, of course, Murray, as that new extension kicks in for him. And when they traded for CJ, they wanted backcourt creation, but at this point in his career, he's not able to provide enough backcourt creation for them just on his own. And they desperately needed a creator, and Murray fits in really well with his length, his defensive ability that completely disappeared in Atlanta, and hopefully will return to form now with him there in New Orleans. And that kind of group, that core there of Zion, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, and then the backcourt of CJ McCollum and DeJounte Murray is very intriguing to me. Of course, it brings up the question of what exactly is going to happen with Brandon Ingram, who's got 1 year left on his contract. There's been rumors everywhere about him possibly getting moved somewhere. Maybe they can recoup some of these assets by trading him away. For New Orleans, I'm going to give this like a a B plus grade. It certainly is going to bring into question DeJounte Murray's off-ball spacing and three-point shooting ability, which has been a question for him throughout his career, both in San Antonio and in Atlanta. How well does he work around other players? How well does he work around someone like Zion with a team in New Orleans that has struggled with spacing a little bit over the past couple of seasons? And CJ obviously can space off the ball, but is it going to be a little bit too much on ball DeJounte Murray? Is that going to take away a little bit from Zion? And is he going to be a little bit in the way when he's off the ball? If he can lock in and be the defensive guy that he was in San Antonio, I love the deal for them. But since that's a little bit TBD, I'm going to give New Orleans a B plus grade here for DeJounte Murray. For Atlanta, I'm going to give them a B grade, and really it's just more so the mindset than anything else. It's just I like the idea of them getting assets, splitting up the backcourt. It's a move that needed to be made. If they went into the year this year with DeJounte Murray and Trae Young on the same team still, it just would have been really awkward, and it would have been uncomfortable, and I don't really think I would have understood what the direction of the franchise was supposed to be. I think given the way that this draft set up for them, where they get the first overall pick in a very weak draft, had this draft been better, maybe things would have been different. Maybe they would have continued to trade away a lot more of these pieces. But right now it seems like they're going to continue to build around Trae, and I'm going to give them a B for the trade, just because I feel like they could have gotten a little bit more value from some of these other more desperate contenders or semi-contenders around the league, but ultimately it's still pretty solid. But my favorite part about the deal is that there are still question marks for each of these teams as we move into the season. We still don't know what either of these rosters are going to look like. We have the Brandon Ingram question, we have the Trae Young question, and it's interesting to have this kind of a deal where it's clear what each team is trying to do, but then there's so many question marks after it that you don't exactly know the true direction. The other thing that's weird about this deal is that I'm surprised New Orleans didn't find a way to get someone like Clint Capella or something in this deal, because they're still looking for a five-man. Jonas Valanciunas more than likely is going to end up hitting free agency. They just traded away Larry Nance. So in the front court, at least specifically at the 5 spot, they definitely are leaving themselves without an option there. And maybe that gets solved by the Brandon Ingram trade, because the Ingram situation compared to Zion is very similar to what the backcourt situation was in Atlanta between DeJounte and Trae, where it's just like there's just better options for the franchise moving forward. I've said this before. If you are New Orleans, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Zion, all three of those guys need to start. At least that's what I've said in the past. Obviously, that's going to be impossible unless you're playing Zion at the 5 now. Like, one of those guys is going to have to come off the bench because CJ and DeJounte Murray are going to start. But it's a little bit of a similar situation with the Ingram thing, and I wouldn't be surprised if they found a way to move him for a big man, or maybe for a couple of different spots in terms of their depth. But I like the direction that New Orleans is going in here. It didn't make any sense to hold on to these picks. They have enough young talent, and they needed certainly more backcourt creation, maybe a little bit more veteran presence. And Murray's still, a pretty young guy, and defensively I think fits in pretty well with their structure as well, because they've got all these wings, but they didn't necessarily have a backcourt defender for some of the quicker players around the league, and Murray can certainly be that guy. Again, just like in Atlanta, though, my only question mark is the off-ball shooting. That's always been an issue for Murray, but I really, really like the deal for New Orleans, depending on what the future fit of the roster is. And honestly, for Atlanta, I hope we get more trades from them. I hope they continue to get rid of some guys, because whether it's around Trae Young or otherwise, it's probably time to reset.